Good
Uh,
morning.
hey, Jules, how are you?
Tonight.
It's not really morning, but to all of our new audience that we're gonna have eventually, you will listen to this in the morning. Welcome to the Armchair CMOs podcast. This is our first episode of Monday Morning Marketing, where we're just gonna talk about some sports stuff, some marketing stuff, some brand stuff, some sports marketing brand stuff, and
Culture
just have some
stuff.
fun. Yeah. So I guess you guys need to know who we are first. Jules, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey y'all, my name is Julie. Born and raised in Rochester, New York, living in DC now. Uh, Marketing girly, marketing analytics girly to be specific. Spent a few years in sports, not working in sports anymore. And I've known Vaughn for
Oh, I guess we're
six
coming
years,
up on six,
probably six-ish.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Vaughn from Richmond, Virginia. Worked in college athletics for 16 years, including some time with Jules, where we worked at Georgetown University. Um, but I'm into the marketing, branding side of sports. I've always been a sports fan, and so this whole podcast is I just want to make sure everyone knows this is Jules' idea. Because we randomly send text messages to each other and with articles or cool stuff that we see on social media about what's happening in the sports world, but specifically from a business and marketing standpoint. So we figured let's just talk about it and see if any of our insights actually mean anything to anyone besides ourselves.
And I know, yeah, I know all of my friends are sick of me sending them random sports marketing, sports business stuff. So I'm essentially just creating an outlet for myself to talk about something I get excited about.
I mean, this is gonna be fun. I mean, we are like really nerds about this stuff. Like you should have seen the conversation where we were going back and forth about the logo and branding for the show. We were very, it was, yes. So it was very intense, but like that's why we're doing this because we're passionate about it. I am like just for the audience to just be aware of, just to see how long this whole thing lasts, considering that I'm team iPhone and Jules, like I don't even she got green bubbles and like
It's a Galaxy, which for the record is the better phone.
okay. The last thing I'll say is at some point we do gotta figure out like we can't call this thing armchair CMOs and we're not sitting in armchairs. So we gotta figure that out at some point. Maybe
Mm.
in armchairs, someone can like rooms to go can sponsor us and like donate some chairs or something. Maybe.
I'm I'm in an armchair. It's just a chic armchair, so you can't actually see it. But
But I feel like I guess we should talk about that then. Well, that's the concept of the show, right? Armchair CMOs. We're gonna talk about stuff that people in the CMO level, C-suite level in marketing and sports talk about, but obviously we have not gotten to that level. So we're just gonna give our opinion and our feedback and our thoughts, like on our Monday morning quarterback vibes, except we're Monday morning sports marketers. And we're gonna try to be good about getting a Monday episode out every Monday to talk about what's going on the week before. But full transparency, we're recording the Sunday nights just so we have time because people got stuff to do. And yeah, so hopefully you enjoy it. We'll go through a couple topics. I'll pick a topic, Jules will have a topic, and then we'll have one big topic that we talk about at the end together. And hopefully you learn some stuff. Feel free to respond to the comment section and tell us where you disagree with us or things that we should talk about. But this is gonna be fun. All right.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to learn a lot.
All right, Jules. You get to go first.
I'm ready. Okay.
Number one for the day.
First ever topic. And I'm excited about it. I think this is one I just want to share because it's recent news I just saw. We can kind of just touch base on it quickly. But I do think it's a trend. Someone I saw some articles about it like last summer, but I think it's a trend we're going to keep seeing is like luxury sponsorships in sports, which I'm thinking about because Chanel just announced that they are going to be sponsoring the boat race TM, which is the rowing competition between Oxford and Cambridge. It's a very like storied competition in the UK. And it's Chanel's first ever sports sponsorship. So interesting that they're deciding to get into this game. I think it's a really good fit given their brand and the event. and the type of folks who might know about that event. Um, but I do think it ties to something we've been seeing elsewhere, like Cadillac sponsoring tennis players, Gucci featuring Yannick Sinner over the summer. Rolex has obviously been a big sponsor of the US Open for a long time, but we're seeing this more and more. And I think the product fit for some of these brands and the events or the players that they're sponsoring has been really strong. And continue to see it here. And I think that it's interesting that Chanel, which is one of the most iconic brands in the world, is getting into sports marketing. Kind of shows you like not only the growth of like the importance of sports marketing, but also like how influential it can be regardless of the brand. So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's definitely for a luxury brand like Chanel, rowing is one of those sports. And I think that this kind of also speaks to the opportunity that some of the other sports that aren't traditionally seen as the biggest drivers or the ones that have the biggest audience do have potential to actually add value to companies like that because of the target that niche audience that they have. That's like rowing is for people that can afford luxury items. So I think that that totally makes sense. I thought about it too. Like we always think about it from a luxury standpoint. Some of those brands, some of the athletes from the bigger sports are usually involved with at least wearing that stuff. But like to actually be able to take that to the next level and have some of those people be involved with partnerships with luxury brands, like, obviously full transparency here. Another note is I have another podcast that's about music, that's about Pharrell and stuff that he does culturally. But, speaking of the luxury brands, connection to sports, Wembanyama was at Pharrell's Louis Vuitton show like right before the Olympics, which was kind of a big deal, which was like another sports tie-in. LeBron and Lewis Hamilton were at the first one that he did in June 2023. And then LeBron and Lewis Hamilton and Pharrell are like part of the board for the Met Gala. So like there's always been this connection between luxury and sports, but the fact that at this point, not only are they really doubling down on the partnership opportunities with sports, like entities, brands, and athletes, but also like really taking this to the next level and having people really step into space that they've never been in, which is really cool.
Agreed.
All
Your
right.
turn.
Topic number 2. So I'm a big NBA guy, so I'm gonna talk about like the NBA just started this week, kicked off on I think that was Tuesday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, but just a lot of the promo for the start of the season was just amazing, like really well done, whether it was on actual linear TV or those TV channels, networks, or actually just on social, and just kind of the combination of content being coming out from athletes, leagues, teams, and then brands. And so specifically the endemic brands, like the brands who are in the sports industry, like really made their presence known and show that they're excited or try to help get people excited about the NBA season. So I guess, I mean, should we tell the audience what an endemic brand is, or should we assume that someone listening to this podcast should know what that is?
Let's explain.
So endemic technically like just means native to. So when we're talking about sports marketing, sports sponsorships, endemic brands are brands that are part of the industry. So it's Nike, Adidas, even networks like ESPN and TNT that have an actual like stake in the sports industry. But then you would have a non-endemic brand would be like Capital One or those, all these financial partners, financial services partners that people have in sports, or some of the health
Skims.
medical services. Yeah, Skims. Skims is a perfect example because it has nothing to do with the actual sport. But so yeah, the stuff that I'm going to talk about is focusing on the endemic brands. Um, the biggest thing that I take away from it is like when you think about where we're at right now more than ever, the games are almost secondary to the entertainment value. And I think that that's something that we know from working in sports kind of started in an arms race before, which was like your game day atmosphere has to be great. So like what are you doing to get people excited about coming to the game? You're coming up with all types of crazy concession items, but the video board elements have got to be crazy. And, do you have a kids zone where kids can play games, stuff like that? So I think that was really a focal point in the 2010s. But as social media has come up, like that's like been the key. like the focal point of trying to get people excited and be able to differentiate yourself with such a cluttered media market. So shout out to Jordan Rogers, who we talk about on this, well, not on the show. I mean, who we talk about in our messages.
In our personal show where we just have these conversations.
Jordan used to work at Nike, but now has like really cool Instagram content that he posts about stuff that's in our wheelhouse, talking about branding and sports marketing. But he kind of mentioned the evolution of sports media and where we're at right now, the transition right now from social media, which was a big deal, to now athletes themselves owning the media. Like, and this was a response to Kyler Murray from the Cardinals in the NFL. Posted a YouTube video, a vlog that was like covering them playing in Monday Night Football, but it came from his channel. Like, so we know that that's something that it's totally about him. It's totally his story. And so I feel like that's where we're at. And that's the opportunity that, the athletes who are involved, like, are trying to keep people excited and keep I guess keep people excited, but also like be able to tell their own story in a way that's helpful for them and also by a byproduct that is being helpful for their organization too.
I didn't want to interrupt. Okay. You know how we actually were talking about this over the summer when we first started talking about the podcast
Hmm.
with the Olympics. I think this year, part of the reason why the Olympics were so big and people were so engaged is more athletes than ever before had direct relationships with their audience and they were posting, like, they're all, they were existing influencers, they had existing audiences, and they were posting directly to the audiences, engaging directly with their audiences daily. And so I think everybody felt more engaged and involved and like attached to the Olympics. At least I know it was true for me than I ever had before.
Yep.
Um, and then like Devin Booker, for one example, was posting his like Olympic vlogs, and he's going to keep doing things like that. I think that's huge too. And it's not, I don't know if it's a byproduct of social media becoming so big or like them using social media really strategically or just like a personal hobby. Like I don't know what is exactly behind driving this, but
Yep.
it's you'd be stupid not to leverage it at this point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a concept that I talk about, and sometimes in spaces where I'm at right now, we're in the like people say that like the creatives are the new athletes because anyone that can use their phone to create content can really create this audience for themselves in a way like where you used to have to like really do something cool because you're an actor or you like were Michael Jordan for people to ever care about you. But being able to do and make cool stuff and make cool content and create things that can get people excited, that's allowing the average person to create their own audience. So I think that that also creates an environment where the athletes can't get left behind. So like they either have to, with the support of their teams or their representation or brands they're working with, help them catch up and not get left behind in terms of being able to create their own stuff and tell their story. So I think that that's part of the conversation is like them understanding, well, if we want to stay as relevant as we have been in the past, we got to catch up and keep up with the people who are like just creating content and they have nothing. That's all they do. So how am I going to be a superstar NBA player or whatever athlete and be able to participate in that space to keep people excited about what I'm doing too? So I think that has a lot to do with it.
I almost think we're kind of like a perfect microcosm of this for the NBA. For example, like you've been an NBA fan for a long time, and I think I became an NBA fan honestly during the pandemic. Like I had just never paid much attention. I've been a huge college basketball fan since I was 14, but never got too much into the NBA. And I think what finally allowed me to get into the NBA was the ties that it's always kind of had to pop culture.
Yep.
Like I got to know the players and the characters off the court, started to care about them as individuals, and then decided to start watching the games and engage with them in the sport they actually played. And now I'm an NBA fan for the game itself, and I watch the games and I care about what happens. But it started with everything that happens off the court, and that was 4 years ago.
Right.
I think it's only grown since then.
Right. So back to the whole point of this topic, I'm gonna give my top three ads and promos for the start of the NBA season. The first one was from Bleacher Report. So they had like this animated rap battle, and it was a collab with a rap battle like Twitter, and I guess they have social media accounts, but just an account that celebrates rap battles, but they had some people that participated that in that write raps on behalf of the old and new stars of the NBA and then battle each other, which I thought was a really creative way. I thought it was a really big like endeavor as a risk taking because anything if anyone knows anything about rapping and rap battles, if like the raps are whack, then the whole thing could have gone so could have gone in a complete wrong direction. So the fact that one the animation side of it made it cool. It visually like kept caught your attention. The players that they used were very important to feature LeBron and D Book and the top names in the league right now. But the fact that the raps were good was definitely an icing on the cake. So kudos to Bleacher Report team for that. Second one, Ant Edwards. I'm a big fan of Ant Edwards as a player, but also just his personality and his authenticity, specifically as it relates to anytime he's on camera, but most importantly in these spots that he's been doing with Adidas. Um, I think it was really cool that they still knew that it was important to have some sort of message come from them about Anthony Edwards from Adidas, even though the new shoe is not ready. So it's still like, well, it's the beginning of the season and we got to get people excited about him in general. But you can still buy the shoes, but like this is not an ad for shoes. This is like just more about the partnership and more about Anthony Edwards. And hopefully you buy some shoes too because you like them. So I thought that one was really cool. And then my favorite, I mean, obviously the biggest story at the start of the season was Braun and Bronny, which whatever you feel about it out there in the world, that's your thing. But me, I thought it was cool. I mean,
Don't hate him because your dad is cooler than yours.
listen, I think that anytime you can show that relationship, whether it's real or fake, father-son, like it's beautiful to have that be showcased. I think it's a really unique opportunity for it. Um, But the spot was really cool because it really felt like it was really something that they would do. Because we know that Braun is like LeBron is like a big ass kid, and like everyone knows that he's super goofy. And
I don't
I,
think you said specifically what you're talking about yet. Sorry.
oh, the Nike spot. Okay, so yeah, the Nike spot. I'm sorry. So the Nike spot literally. Bronny's about to get into the car and go to practice, but it starts off with a shot of LeBron pouring cereal into Bronny's Tesla, and then he runs away and he gets into the back of the Maybach or Phantom or whatever. And then Bronny comes out and he opens the door and a bunch of cereal comes out. I'm assuming that they're in their front yard or their driveway or what's supposed to be their driveway. So it's some rookie hazing basically, and it's a really cool moment to showcase that like even though it's a father-son thing, like we're still going to treat him. I'm still going to treat him as his dad, but as LeBron James, as another rookie. So I thought it was cool. It was well done. But from a strategy standpoint, I just wanted to point out I thought it was interesting just the way they distributed it. So the post is only on LeBron's IG and no IG collab with Nike, Nike basketball, or even Bronny. Bronny doesn't have it on his page at all. So I think that maybe you lose some reach there because you don't take advantage of that tool. But at the same time, I do think that maybe it also lends itself to be more authentic because it's like this is actually like a video that I shot of me, even though we know that a whole film crew, like obviously the quality of it is not like iPhone quality. But like let's just say we had a film crew just do this video for me personally as LeBron James to prank my son. And then we're going to put it on there. And the fact that literally the only branding in it is a Nike swoosh that comes up at the end. So, and Bronny and Nike basketball are tagged in it. But again, no collaboration post means that it's not on those other people's pages, which I think is kind of an interesting approach to the strategy.
Did you see in their press conference after their game, somebody asked Bronny about it. He said, "Oh, like fortunately it wasn't my car or something." And then Bron caught that because I think the point was to make it seem
Yes.
like it was his car. And he was like, "Oh yeah, you have another car." Like dad's still trying to teach him
I
tricks of the
mean, because he's
trade.
19 years old. He's still a kid. And I think
He's such a kid.
like I also made the point to make sure that I'm assuming that it still exists, but he was signed as a Nike athlete when he was before he became an NBA player. So I'm assuming they still have a relationship. It's not like he wouldn't post it because he's not signed to them. So um, it's interesting. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool video though. Honestly, like, so did you see anything did you watch any games last week?
No.
Well, none of this stuff made you watch any games. So it's okay. It's terrible marketing.
Okay, you're not wrong. This is what I was going to make this point earlier when you're talking about this. Like, and well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but uh not only are like our brains getting more crowded with the amount of content coming out on social media, all the streaming platforms, everything that you can access at any given time, but literally just the sports market is becoming more and more crowded. Like as women's sports grow, as like we're paying so much attention to college. Like right now we're in the thick of the college football season. Like I think a lot of focus is on that. I know that's why like I probably would have watched some stuff Thursday night, but my college football team was playing and like literally just our time that we can dedicate to sports is crowded too. So the fact that I engaged with NBA related content at all this week, I think is a credit to this marketing, even if I didn't watch any games. um,
That's good. So let's just
yeah.
transition to that now. You talked a little bit about women's basketball. Obviously, this season, and they look like geniuses if this because it worked out this way. That literally the last game of the WNBA season was 2 days before the start of the NBA season. So wrapping up the WNBA season, this was obviously a huge season for the league and for personalities that are in the league, new and old, specifically a lot of focus on the new. So we're going to talk a little bit about in our closing discussion here, just about recapping the season and kind of like what we think is next for what's coming up for the WNBA and some of the teams.
And before we shift, I know you said you don't want to get too specific, but I do want to share. I found some specific statistics on this year's season, which I think really put in to perspective like how big the season was for the WNBA.
Let's
So
go.
this year's I know I love my numbers. This year's game five of the finals peaked with 3.3 million viewers. It's not like I think the average NFL game gets like 12 million or something like that. So it's not outrageous in it of itself, but it was the most watched finals game for the league in 25 years. So I think speaks to how big this year's final was. Uh, Here's another example. The Liberty this year saw a 64% attendance increase in their
Wow.
home games. That's huge, 64% year over year. Like, and I don't, I don't think it's solely because of performance on that.
Right.
Overall, WNBA attendance was the highest ever in 22 years and grew by nearly 50% year over year. I don't want to dive too deep into the numbers, but just like to put it into a little bit of perspective, it's not like we're saying like WNBA blew up this year and it's not really true. Like the numbers show that it's true too. It's not just that it became a part of like our cultural awareness. It's real. Like they're probably seeing it in their ticket sales and their revenue numbers.
Did you watch how many games did you watch this year, Jules?
WNBA, at least a few on TV, at least a few in person. I watched.
You went to games in person? You went to
Had to go see my girl Caitlin Clark.
good.
Mm-hmm.
I probably watched like I watched a handful of games. I think I saw all of the matchups where Caitlin and Angel Reese played each other. I tried to catch as many games that were broadcast. Like I'm kind of a fake Aces fan. Not fake. Like I actually like that's the team that I rooted for this year.
Mm-hmm.
I like Asia Wilson a lot. Um, for some reason I have a like not a thing. That's kind of inappropriate, but like I I Kelsey Plum. I've always liked her game. She like part
Who?
of it is Kelsey.
Okay.
Do you know who that is?
Kelsey Plum. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't hear what you said the first time.
Yeah, Kelsey Plum, like she reminds me, I think my connection to her is that she reminds me of someone that I grew up with. They played that like my friend Aaron, who I went to elementary and middle school with, and like I actually um her dad was my little league baseball coach and her brother was on the team. So she was amazing at soccer and basketball. And she just like the way that she plays reminds me like because Erin used to beat us and like she was way better than I could ever have been in basketball. But I get reminded of Erin when I think about Kelsey. So I think that's part of the reason why the combination of her and then Sid Colson actually was like an assistant at Rice when I was there for like a brief moment we overlapped. So
Hmm.
I root for the Aces because of those connections and I mean, it's not really has nothing to do with Dawn Staley, but like I do also like Dawn Staley a lot, which is part of the reason why I like Asia. So I watch a lot of Aces games. That I say all that to say I watch a lot of Aces games.
That was a really long way of saying that. Why?
Someone that has no like, because like not living in DC, I can't just go to
Games.
the Mystics. The
Yeah.
Mystics. But so you went to games, you watched games. What do we think is next for them though?
I think everyone's biggest question is going to be, can we pay our top rookies more than $70,000 a year? Like, I think that uh, a lot of I engage with a lot of content from like a feminist standpoint that is
Hmm?
not, it cares about the sports, it cares about the sports market, but it also cares about like why historically we haven't cared about female athletes or held them on the same pedestal. And
Right.
I'm so glad from little athlete Julie, like I just found all my old trophies this summer. I was cleaning out my dad's house and remembered like little me looking up to like Abby Wambach and Mia Hamm and all those girls that were around when I was little. And there's so many more superheroes to pick from now. So
Yeah.
I care about this a lot from that perspective too. And I think people like me and a lot of the content that I engaged with over the summer and like when back near the draft was why can't we pay them anything? And
Yeah.
the big question there I know always focuses on as a percentage of league revenue. Like obviously the WNBA doesn't make as much money. I don't even think it is maybe going to break even this year. I don't know. I haven't seen their balance sheet, but
Right.
like as a percentage of league revenue, it's still so low compared to the NBA. And I think that's going to be the big question everyone's asking. I obviously don't know what's going to happen there, but I think the one thing that I'm really glad to see is I think like private sponsorships of these athletes is going to grow so much, and it'll just make more viable for athletes in all sports, not just WNBA, like the female athletes across the board, to keep playing their sport, even if they're making pennies on the dollar compared to their male counterparts. So I don't know. I think that'll be a big question, but I do think we'll see a ton of growth in sponsorships.
Yeah, and I think that to that point about the pay and the sponsorship is Angel Reese just got a signed a deal with Reebok this week. And she'll have her own signature shoe in 2026. So she even was like, I don't know if she was joking, but a comment came out where she was basically kind of suggesting that the NBA, WNBA salary doesn't like is not enough to pay her bills. But to your point, like the more, because obviously she's doing so many things that besides playing basketball, she's taking advantage of what we were talking about earlier in terms of the content creation and building your own audience that lives with you that you can you know, monetize in ways that make sense and are authentic with her podcast that came out. And obviously this Reebok deal is a big part of that. So I think that's a great blueprint for what makes sense. But I think not to get too much into the Angel versus Caitlyn thing, but I think that it has to make sense. Like you have to want to do it. You have to be engaging and want to participate. And I don't think that Caitlin Clark wants to do any of that stuff. And I think that that's fine. She'll be able to get her own stuff that makes sense for her, but we shouldn't expect her to do all the stuff that Angels do and or vice versa, just because everyone's trying to put them together because they came out at the same time. Like they have such a history. I think that's a perfect example of the opportunities that exist. Um, for one don't necessarily exist for the other, but you can create them if you like have the right team around you and like the visibility that you guys get from each other, having new platforms and new ways to connect with people is going to help everybody.
Yeah, I saw a conversation earlier this week about whether Angel Reese will even continue to play because she does have so much else going for her
Right.
outside of like actually playing, and it's probably bringing her way more money. I think her stopping would be bad for the league. A lot of people really care about her. A lot of people want to watch. A lot of people are really engaged by the Caitlyn Angel drama, which doesn't really exist, but that storyline has been created because we love to pit women against each other. Um, So I think it wouldn't be good. So maybe that's more impetus for like the WNBA to figure out how to pay their
Yeah.
star athletes more. You know, if you want these athletes to engage an audience individually to stay in the league to attract viewers,
Right.
then you have to figure out a way to incentivize them to do that.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. What's happening? Like, I think the Players Association opted out of the collective bargaining agreement. So like that's going to be important for I mean, that's now. You got to figure that out before the start of the next season. And there's always talks about expansion. I think the Golden State team starts next year. But I always thought too, like from a marketing standpoint, and not just from a marketing standpoint, from a business operations standpoint too, just how important or how like beneficial is the fact that some of the teams in WNBA have NBA affiliates and some of them don't, right? Like, how does that contribute to either helping elevate the visibility or elevating the support for that team, or does it take away from it? What do
Yeah, I don't
what are your thoughts, Jules? What's your hypothesis about that?
no, that's a great. I'm glad you brought that up. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I have a hypothesis. I do think that support from the MNBA, which I love that that's becoming a thing. um, I do think the support from the male players has been actually huge this year. I've been, you know, kind of following this for years, like why women's sports don't get the support they need. And it's like we don't just need women to care about women's sports, we need men to care about men's sports or women's sports. And I think this year we finally saw that. Like a lot of the male players were posting about the women's games, posting about what's happening going on in the women's leagues. Like the relationship between like Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu like definitely brings a lot of attention to the sport every time he's posting. And like he's posting to congratulate her or talking about how good she is. Like that elevation from the male players, I think is really good for the league. And so maybe from that perspective, is if there is like an MNBA affiliate, then I think that it could be a boost to the women's team.
So I looked it up. 5 out of the last 10 WNBA champions have an NBA, an MNBA team affiliation. So, um, there's so Seattle and Vegas won two each.
Okay.
That's four. And then the Sky is the fifth one that don't have the affiliation. So it's weird because the Sky is in Chicago, but they're not run by the same organization that runs the Bulls.
Oh, interesting.
They
Okay.
don't play in the United Center. They play in I think they play in DePaul's arena.
Well, Mystics don't play in the same arena as the Wizards, but it's the same owner.
Right. Right. So I think that that's part of the conversation too, is like I feel like because like that's a good point. The fact that Monumental is at a point where they have the ownership of both, but they've created a venue that's for them primarily. I mean that that venue, just like Capital One, is a home to Wizards, but home to a bunch of other events.
Mhm.
The arena that the Mix is playing is home to a bunch of other events too, but it's tailor made for them. So I think that that's like, I think they're even more ahead of the game compared to, like, I guess another example would be who else is one, like Minnesota, right? Because Minnesota, I thought like this year I was completely in the finals happy to see that Minnesota, especially after Anthony Edwards and them did such a great, like a big run to in the playoffs in the NBA, and to have that same arena be filled for the WNBA finals was really cool to see, and also
Yeah.
progress. So
I was gonna say, Mystics moved both games against, oh my God, I want to say, yeah, Indiana Fever. Okay, that was right. I was like, that was our college team. No, the Fever. They moved both games against the Fever to Capital One Arena, which is the men's arena. It holds 23,000 people and mostly full. Like I don't ever sit in the 400 level because I think I'm better than that. But I was up in the rafters for that game. I paid over $100 for a ticket, and I was like, to pay over $100 for a ticket to a women's basketball game is I'm actually like thrilled about it.
right.
I went to a lot of like Syracuse women's basketball games growing up, and I feel like they were like $12. So absolutely thrilled that like there's that much draw for even just a regular season game.
for sure, for sure. And I think that
Anyway, I brought us on top.
that just shows like that's something that we've always talked about too in our marketing and in our roles in Cause of Flex specifically is like I've never felt like I think the just blanket statement that we got to do for the men what we're doing for the women is not fair. Like you need to be strategic about what's going to be the best for the women's game and you know what's going to have the best experience to help elevate that. And it's not always the same things. Sometimes it's better things. Sometimes it's like not as like sometimes you're taking resources away because it's addition by subtraction, right? I think that that's something that is a perfect example of what Miami is doing by having a smaller arena that's
Yeah.
home that they can consistently be in and their fans can get used to it. Like I think that's great. That's much better than them playing in Capital One Arena and it being, 60% empty for most games except when you play Caitlin Clark. But having
Mhm.
the ability to go to Capital One Arena when you are playing Caitlin Clark and then make a bunch of money for it, that goes back into the reinvestment of that team, I think is really amazing.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
So to anyone, everyone who listens to this or watches this, like I hope you learned something and some had a good time listening to us chat. It's just two old friends just chatting about sports marketing being fake CMOs. But ultimately the goal is that we'll talk about this so well that maybe someone like will actually hire us to be a CMO one day.
But
So
we do come as a pair, so sorry.
all right, guys. Everyone, thanks for listening. Jules, good to see you. We'll do this again.
You too. Sounds good.
All
Thanks,
right.
Juan.